Hey guys, what's up? This is Andy Epix, and we're experimenting. Today we're testing out a Pegasus style launcher that one of my friends made. But first, status check to begin takeoff procedures. Status check to begin takeoff procedure. Gear, go. Jet, go. First stage, go. Second stage, go. Fuel, go. Deployment altitude, 12K. Range is green. Space green. Roger. Standing by. T-5. We have turbojets on. We're using the Whiplash Turbo Ramjets. This was something built by my friend for a Reddit weekly challenge. We have brakes off. We have start. This will go down all the way to the runway and then take off. I'm just checking with my friend about some last minute things to do with this. Approaching 100 meters a second. 100 meters per second, velocity still increasing as we continue to go zipping down the runway. Passing the spaceplane hangar. Passing the administration facility. Those light towers are from the KSP Floodlights mod. Spacecraft is approaching the end of the runway. At the end of the runway, it will begin its pitch up maneuver to a pitch of 20 degrees. Pitch up, started. Pitch 20. Actually, the spacecraft pitched higher than anticipated. The 1.0 aerodynamics are causing a bit of rocking on the spacecraft. We have wheel sep. Unlike the actual Pegasus Stargazer, this rocket's wheels are designed to separate and fall. You can see them falling away there as we're now through 150 meters per second. Spacecraft flight is continuing. Spacecraft is now 1 kilometer in altitude. Release altitude is expected to be around 12 kilometers. The turbo ramjets are accelerating us. We're at half a Mach and increasing speed. The spacecraft actually looks pretty good like a Pegasus rocket. Credits to my bro, Michael, for designing it. No, wait, sorry about that. Credits to my bro, Jeb, for designing it. The landing gear fall and get destroyed in the ocean. The spacecraft separates and climbs. So we're experiencing a nominal climb of the spacecraft at 30 degrees. Release altitude is expected to be around 12 kilometers. So once we release around 12 kilometers, the spacecraft will free fall. The rocket will free fall and then it will ignite during those few seconds of free fall. The first and second stage tanks will be unlocked, and then the first stage will ignite. Unlike the actual Pegasus, this is a spacecraft that's fueled by liquid. The actual Pegasus spacecraft is solid fueled. And if anyone knows of a mod that adds Pegasus and Stargazer in, or of a mod that's in development, and would like me to beta test it, please just message me on YouTube. We're up above 5 kilometers. We're beginning to lose air in the shock cones, even though our intake, we're beginning to lose air in the intake, even though the airspeed is increasing. That increased airspeed gives our ramjets more air, which increases their thrust. They've got very high specific impulse, and they're drawing 368 units of fuel per second. So we're up 6 kilometers, approaching 270 meters per second. Altitude is expected to be Pegasus release is expected to occur around 12 kilometers. It's a beautiful flight so far. The FTS has been armed aboard, is safe aboard the spacecraft currently. Approaching drop. The moment the spacecraft is released, the FTS will be armed. So we're approaching 300 meters per second surface velocity. We're at Mach 0.98. Mach 1. Pitching up. Spacecraft is pitching even higher now for release at around 12 kilometers. The spacecraft will separate, and you'll notice the aircraft. We'll look at the spacecraft separation from the bottom of the spacecraft. So we're now 10 kilometers. Spacecraft will separate at 12. And we'll have a few seconds of free fall before ignition. Stand by for spacecraft deployment. Spacecraft deployment should occur shortly. 3, 2, 1, release. Spacecraft has released. Free fall initiated. Stages active. Activating the first stage. First stage engine active. First stage engine throttling up. First stage engine burning. Second stage liquid fuel tank on. You can see the aircraft up there. This is the Pegasus. Spacecraft is now at 380 meters per second. Spacecraft is now passing the KSC island. The reason I'm climbing on such a steep trajectory is deadly re-entry. I'm using the deadly re-entry mod along with several others. Normally a flight like this is conducted automatically, but I'm going to fly it manually due to the unpredictability of MechJeb. But we're still climbing. We're halfway through our first stage propellant tanks. Okay, the controls are a bit wonky. I need to do a control from here. Where's our probe core? I should be able to see it. Yeah, we're going to do a control from the probe core. There we go. Now the controls are good. We're going to fly a 30-degree flight profile. You can see we're approaching orbital velocities. We're at 700 meters per second. The range is still green. I'm launching it into a sort of wonky trajectory. This is just a another LEO sat. This satellite is another one of the. This is the first Pegasus LEO sat flight. I'm not going to launch this onto GTO because I don't know how exactly it's going to work. Launching into a high orbit. But if I start a career mode save, the Pegasus is going to be in the career mode save. This Pegasus I've put as a stock craft, so it's going to be included in. You're going to see one. Actually, my friend built this spacecraft with enough Delta V to, I believe, do a direct Duna insertion. Not sure how high we're going to be able to make it. This is just the first test flight of the Pegasus. But you can see we're at 33 kilometers and have an apogee of 41. So this is just our first flight test of Pegasus. Spacecraft is continuing to perform as expected. Spacecraft is still generating aerodynamic lift, but there's barely any atmosphere. I believe my friend equipped this stock craft with a pressure barometer. Yeah, he equipped it with a Presmat barometer. So, yeah, but there's no atmosphere up here. We have an apogee of 45 kilometers. You can see it falling. The launch stage is designed to be expendable. The launch stage is an expendable stage. So you can see we've burned out. Then we're going to separate that and ignite the second stage. The second stage should get us up to apogee of about 70 or so kilometers. And then we should be able to circularize from there and deploy the probe. But this has been an interesting experience with the new launch vehicle. I shall have to continue experimenting with this. Launch vehicle. You can see we're launching into a lower inclination orbit than our Progress and International Space Station. That's a separate side project I'm working on. I'll update you on that when I'm ready to launch Expedition 1 to the station, which is going to be after the Progress is docked. But you can see we're already getting pretty high, and this engine is becoming very effective. I have a feeling we could probably bring our launch stage up to this altitude. But we're still climbing. Apogee of 55. So we will shut this down when we reach a apogee that we're happy with. When we reach about 60 kilometers, we're going to jettison the fairing. I'm going to download stock clamshell fairings from CCAN in the future so I can use it in future episodes of Kerbal Space Program. Stand by for fairing deploy. Negative. Spacecraft is now at apogee 60. Velocity 1.8 kilometers per second. And continuing to climb out of the Kerbal home continent. We're going to cut out as soon as the apogee reaches 75. And then when the apogee reaches 75, we will cut the main engine and coast to the circularization burn. Stand by for fairing shell. Apogee is now 68 kilometers. Downrange distance, 88 kilometers. Apogee of 70 kilometers. Spacecraft will begin flying directly along the horizon. We have shutdown confirmed. Second stage shutdown is confirmed. Now we begin the coast phase up to apogee. Now that the spacecraft is above 60 kilometers, we can deploy the fairing, which you see flying off there and below somewhere. And then you can see our little spacecraft. So you can see we've got barely any atmosphere left. We've got reaction wheels that are pretty good. Standing by for solar panel deploy. These are the 3x2s. But first we're going to deploy our main communications dish. And now we're going to start deploying our solar panels. Which you can see being deployed and beginning their sun track. So we're up at about 70 kilometers. We are above 70 kilometers. Just want to see what I can't see my orbital inclination, darn it. We're on our continuing coast phase now. much delta V do we have left? 3 kilometers per second. Alright, so we're going to start the burn of our second stage for orbital insertion. And then we will decouple the payload once we reach a suitable altitude. We have throttle down. Actually, this probably has enough delta V to reach GTO. We're going to boost it up to 500 kilometers since that's where I designated it to go. Shut down. And you can see we've brought up our autopilot window as we prepare for circularization. We're warping around the planet. And we are go for circ. Our maneuver will be performed at an altitude of 500 kilometers. On a highly inclined orbit. You can see there our progress vehicle, which has to wait 3 days to perform a maneuver of its own to catch up with the ISS. We have the Cosmodrone mod installed, which means we have effectively Baikonur in the desert of Kerbin. And here we go, preparing for circularization. Then we will perform an inclination change to 0. Or we can just release the payload here. Standing by for shutdown. .3 meters per second remaining, 0.2, 0.1. Shutdown. Changing inclination to 0. Preparing for burn in 24 minutes for our inclination change. For our plane change and then release. Actually, you know what? Remove. Standing by for spacecraft release. Spacecraft is being pointed towards Kerbin, stability on. Instead of using RCS, we're using a bunch of reaction wheels. And 3, go for spacecraft release. 3, 2, 1, release. We have released the spacecraft. Performing temperature check. 257 degrees above 0. But as you can see here, we're pointed in the correct orientation to perform our artificial solar eclipse experiment. And there's the second stage flying off into space. I wonder, did the kick from the engine do anything? Yeah, it boosted it by 1 kilometer. The kick from decoupling it boosted it by 1 kilometer. Hey Jeb, just a reference for future. Please put some extra electric charge so we can boost it into the first stage into a graveyard orbit. This has been Kerbal Space Program with UACE testing, or Andy Epic, sorry.